is Carson, and welcome to this video of HMM History Mystery Monday. I hope if you are new here, you hit that like button, you hit the subscribe button, and you hit the bell notification and get notified every time I post on Mondays. If you have already been here, thank you for returning. I love y'all. Love y'all regardless. Love y'all if you're new, you're old, whatever. I still love y'all. So today we're continuing the story of Marie Antoinette. This is the part 2. If you haven't seen the part 1, we'll have that linked, channel linked, socials linked for this video. If you like any other types of videos, go watch my channel. There will be a bunch of videos just like this on many different things if you enjoy this. If you like my makeup as well, video will be linked down in the description. I have a second channel for just makeup in general. The socials for that channel as well will be linked in the description. And yeah, let's get back into Marie Antoinette. So let's get into it. So where we left off is Louis just passed away, Louis the 15th. Marie and Louis the 16th have exiled Madame Berry, and during her exile ended in 1776 at the end of October, and she returned to the Chateau Louvinus, I think it would be, or multiple more syllables maybe, I don't know. But she returned to her chateau there, and she was never to come back to Versailles after that. So now let's go back to 1774, so 2 years before, right after Louis passes away. Louis the 16th, who we'll now just talk about as Louis, the only Louis we know. He rose to become the now King of France, and Marie became his royal consort, meaning she was the Queen of France now. And she didn't actually have much political influence in the court, and none of her candidates that she tried to push into the court actually got in there, especially Antoinette, who we talked about earlier, who was the chief minister for Louis the 15th. Marie tried to push him into court, tried to get him in there. Didn't work, but she did play the decisive role to exile and disgrace Louis the 15th's most powerful minister, who was Duke d'Angoulême, and then they got in a new one, obviously. On May 24th of the same year, Louis gave Marie a chateau, and it's called Petit Triomphe, and it was on the grounds of Versailles, and she lived in it for most of her life of being in Versailles. And this building, this chateau, was actually built for Madame Pompadour, who we talked about in the first video, who was the mistress of Louis the 15th. Louis the 15th actually built that chateau for her. She lived in it till she passed away. Now Marie. Louis let her rebuild, let her redecorate any way she wanted. And rumors were spreading that she actually plastered the walls with gold and diamonds, but it wasn't actually true, because you know, people just want to spread rumors, especially about Marie. Marie, she was known to spend a lot of money on fashion. She was a fashionista for a time, basically. She became a fashion icon. Even though the country of France itself at this time in 1774. It was going through a financial crisis, and the people of France were suffering, and we already kind of know about that and know why the French Revolution began. And the people didn't have like any money. Prices were rising. It's the same thing as today. Inflation, not enough money to be made, and people are suffering. So with her fashion, she adapted the English way of dresses, and they were made with, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, I think it's Idian, and it was actually banned from France. And it was to protect the wool and the silk industry of France from 1686 until 1759. The other things that were used to make the dresses were percalin, which I'm also not sure how to pronounce that, and muslin. So the flower war, and flower not like plant flour, a flour as in FLOUR flour for baking, of 1775, it was a series of riots that broke out in France. This damaged Marie's reputation with the people, actually. And you remember when I talked about in the first part, people loved her, people adored her. Now, the fact that inflation's messing with their businesses and messing with their livelihood, now people are like, I don't like you so much. I don't think I like you so much. I don't think I like you at all now, because you're kind of messing with my stuff. Many people actually blamed her for what was happening. The economic situation and the crisis that was going on. And France was not able to pay off the country's debt, since she was just wasting away the money on stuff, on fashion, on furniture, on everything. I mean, let's remember, she's only like 18 years old at this time. She is Queen of France. She's only 18. Come on. Like, she doesn't know any better. But also she might. But she may have just didn't care. Who knows? Who really knows? That's what's speculated. Either she knew, she didn't care, or obviously she's 18 years old, and being the Queen of France, I mean, she's a teenager, she doesn't really know about money. She's not really in the courts, doesn't really know all the information about what she needs to know about not spending money and saving money and budgeting and all this stuff that we all know today, you know. But, yeah, so she didn't know that. But we know, because we learned from her mistakes, basically. But when this was happening, and the flower war happened, Maria Theresa comes back into the picture. Her mother, she reached out to the ambassador, who was still there, the Austrian ambassador that we talked about. He was still there. She reached out to him and was like, hey, you need to tell Maria she needs to stop doing this. People don't like her. She's messing up. She needs to fix it. So Louis, he wrote a letter to his brother, Leopold, who is actually the Grand Duke of Tuscany in Italy. So that's why in the courts, you need to know Italian. And many things along with that he wrote in the letter. One of those things was about him and Marie's marriage, and the fact that it was technically not consummated yet still. But during this time, he wrote in the letter that he introduces the member and just stays there without moving for about a couple minutes, and then just runs off without saying goodnight or anything to Marie. I saw some things about that. The reason why it's technically not consummated is because he wasn't circumcised, and he had a condition which caused infections, and it was the infection of Famosus. I think it's how you pronounce it. Don't Google it. That's what was said. That's why their marriage technically wasn't consummated, is because of all that happening. So then Louis, so Marie is 20 years old. Louis is 21. And so because of this happening, he ends up actually getting a circumcision so that they can finally technically consummate their marriage and actually, you know, probably produce an heir to their throne. But it's the fact that the quote is that he just and then he just sits there, just no talking, just sits there for like a couple minutes. And you can imagine Marie's probably like, are we done? Can I not do this, please? And Louis just, and then he's like, all right, peace out. When I read that, I was dying laughing, because I was like, okay, I guess if that's what Louis thought, then that's what would happen, and how awkward he is. Okay, Louis. All right, Louis. I thought that was so funny. So after the fact, he got a circumcision finally at the age of 21. Their marriage was finally consummated on August, just during the month of 1777. And of April of the next year, so 8 months later, on May 16th, it was announced that Marie was actually pregnant finally. So then, because of this, everybody was like, oh my god, yay, like, you're finally doing what you're supposed to do, like, 8 years ago, but okay. Like, you're supposed to do this first time, but okay, whatever. Their daughter, Marie Theresa Charlotte, with the nickname that they gave her, was Madame Royale. She was born in Versailles, December 19th of 1778. Even right after Maria Theresa Charlotte was born, and even after every single child that they end up having later on, their paternity was actually questioned. Like, is Louis actually the baby daddy? Because obviously y'all been having issues for the past 8 years. Is this actually, like, true? Yes, it actually was true. Like, that, like, all their children were actually Louis and Maria's, like, their actual children. It wasn't just a random person to help them with that. It was actually their own children. If you know anything about history, especially royalty, you already know, like I do, that there are actually kings and queens who have done this during Marie's pregnancy. A couple things were to happen, and that this actually affected her later in life. She didn't realize this, that her friend, who was a Swedish diplomat, his name is Count Axel von Fersen, he came back to France, and he came back for 2 years, and then Marie's brother, her younger brother, Joseph II, he claimed the throne of Bavaria, so now he is the ruler of Bavaria. He did this without permission or support of Prussia and the Austrian monarchs. So he came to France, and the fact that Axel came, Count Axel, for 2 years, people speculated maybe Maria Theresa was actually his kid. After Joseph took over Bavaria, Marie had to plead with Louis to speak on behalf of the Austrian, then created the Peace of Trianon that actually stopped the war that was going on between Bavaria and Prussia and Austria themselves at this time. And they made this peace treaty on May 13th of 1779, and Austria ended up at least taking over 100,000 inhabitants of the territory of Bavaria, and then Joseph took the rest. Joseph was in charge of the rest. So this was seen that Marie was siding with Austria instead of France. And that started to cause hostilities towards Austria from the French people and the court and everything. So they were like, oh, our queen doesn't even care about our country. Our queen cares about her past country more than us. Marie actually started to change seats in court because she was like, you know what? These old ass people, they don't need to be in the court no more. Let's change it up. Let's do something different. And obviously, of course, they didn't like that. One thing she stopped trying to do was a custom of very heavy makeup. You know, when you think of the time period of this happening and you think of Paris during this time, you had white makeup, you had a birthmark or a little mole right there in liner, and then you had the big old blush and everything, and you had even like bigger wigs and the big old hoop sided skirts and dresses and everything. And she's like, nah, we ain't gonna do that no more. That's uncomfortable. We ain't gonna do it no more. So then she adapted a more feminine look that was actually from Poland, and it was known as goulet. The Polish fashion was actually the fashion that we know today, as during the Civil War and American Revolution, the fashion that we know about during those time periods. Then America was like, hey, I like that too, let's do that. And so they started doing that from 1775 to 1795. So basically, you know, then until Industrial Revolution, until that, and then, you know, fashion changes. And Marie, in 1780, she participated in musicals and plays, actually, in the theater that was actually in her chateau. And she would put on plays and musicals and everything because, you know, she was bored. She wasn't a part of the courts. She had to find something else to do. Something that she liked. While she was doing this, France was still in debt, and Marie begged Louis to involve France into the Revolutionary War. And Louis was like, you know, no, we don't need to. We're in debt. We kind of don't need to be in more debt. But most people thought, because of this, Marie's false care, that she thought that, like, people were like, well, she don't care about court. She don't care about politics. Why is she trying to get Louis to make us go into war? That's gonna put us in more debt. And when she did this, she also got Russia, Austria to back France during the war. So it wasn't just French people going off to the Revolutionary War, like we know. It was actually Russians and Austrians also coming to help, because she had ties to both. In this happening, this established the first League of Armed Neutrality, and that stopped Britain and nominated both Minister of War Philippe Henry and Secretary of the Navy Charles Eugene Gabriel de la Croix. Them two, they actually helped George Washington during the Revolutionary War, and they were the helping hand, along with everything else, that ended it in 1783. Marie then also nominated more people to the court to reject the old reign, like how I told you about the older people that have been in the court for most of their lives, and she wanted to change it up. She wanted new people in there. This caused her influence to become paramount in government. So her making changes caused her to be more into government in courts. And the Ministry of War that we talked about a second ago, he then changed that you have to be of high nobility to become an officer of the court. And that, in doing, blocked access to commoners to become high positions in the French court, which obviously that made people mad. And it caused and forced equality to be challenged in the country of France. And there became one of the main grievances that causes the French Revolution. But Marie don't know this until later. So life keeps going on. During her second pregnancy, she actually ended up having a miscarriage, and this was of July of 1779. But later, her mom, Maria Theresa, she actually thought that maybe Marie wasn't actually pregnant and she just had a heavy period, but it was so heavy that Marie thought she had a miscarriage, is what Maria Theresa believes, and wrote a letter to Marie about. So then Marie was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. Marie got pregnant again, and got pregnant for real this time, on March of 1781, and 8 months later, October 22nd, Louis Joseph Xavier Francois, now the new Dauphin of France, was born. So now Louis, technically the 17th, Louis Joseph, we're gonna call him Louis Joseph because that's how they were calling him instead. He was born, and now he is the next runner-up to the royalty and the throne of Paris in France itself. So before Marie found out she was actually pregnant, Maria Theresa, her mother, ended up passing away November 29th of 1780. And this caused Marie to be very afraid. And when this happened, she was scared that the alliance between France and Austria was going to end. But Joseph, remember the Bavarian king now, he wrote to Marie and said, nothing's changing. You're still in good hands through Austria. Austria, we still like you. Bavaria, we like you now too. You're fine. You're good. You're still in goodwill. So after he wrote this, Joseph visited Versailles again. And like we talked about when he visited her the first time, it was actually during her first pregnancy with Marie Theresa, her daughter. Wanted just to check on her and everything. But when this was happening, people actually thought that Marie wasn't just, hanging out with her brother. Marie actually was just hanging out with her brother and, shooting the shit, talking about that she's pregnant, talking about that she's gonna have a kid soon. And Joseph was so happy that he's gonna become an uncle and everything. And, rumors spread. Rumors always spread, especially about Marie, that they were thinking that she was talking about French and Austrian alliance, and that she actually was sending money to Austria from the French treasury. So people thought she was just giving French people money away, giving France's money away, putting them in more debt, giving it to Austria instead of keeping it in their country. in 1782. Princessa of Wami. She was a court official during this time, and she actually had to file for bankruptcy, and she had to resign her position in the court. And when this happened, Marie then appointed Duchess de Polignac to take over. Many people who saw de Polignac and they believed that she was too modest for court and too modest for her position, but Louis and Marie both trusted her completely and gave her a multi-room apartment in Versailles, a 13-room apartment in Versailles, and they also paid her very well for her time. The fact that the Polignac family gained so much wealth and so much like extravagant lifestyle in a short amount of time like this, people were already still outraged by the fact they changed the court, they did all this. They were even more outraged by this now too. Duchess de Polignac, she gained such an advantage in court because of her position, and this lowered the popularity of Marie even way more than it already was being lowered. Okay, I had to take an intermission. I know the lighting's a little bit different. I'm gonna finish up this video in a minute. I'm going to tell you guys a little bit more, and yeah. Maria, she announced another pregnancy in June of 1783, but that night of her 28th birthday, she actually suffered a miscarriage, and this time it actually was a miscarriage, sadly. And during this time too of her actually suffering a miscarriage, there were pamphlets that were being spread about Marie and her friends in the court. They were participating in orgies, apparently, is what people were thinking, and pamphlets were being spread about. And that they thought Marie actually was a lesbian, and they gave her the nickname the German Vice. When this started happening, Maria Theresa, because during this time, Maria Theresa was still alive, and she had to use the ambassador that's been there this whole time, talk to Marie and discuss Marie's safety during this time because of the fact this was all being brought out and brought to life. In 1783, Marie, right after she suffered the miscarriage, she then built her Hamlet Chateau near her Petit Trianon Chateau in the Park of Versailles. And this caused even more of an outrage and an uproar. Again, the fact that the cost of what she spent to build this Hamlet Chateau was ridiculous and did not need to be spent at all. Marie, she supported science, art. She was even there for the launch of the first hot air balloon, and that air balloon was called Montgolfier. She also had Louis lift the band on April 27th of 1784 of this play called The Marriage of Figaro. But the play itself spoke very negatively in portraying nobilities, and that's why it was banned. But then because of Marie, she loved art, she loved musicals, she even participated in them, and she asked Louis, lift the band for me for this one. Let's change it. It's okay. Louis then bought her another chateau, which also caused more uproar for obvious reasons, and this caused the nobilities not to even like her even more than they already weren't. And since the price was known as being 6 million livres at the time, and so it being 6 million livres at the time, and this is 1784, you can't imagine how much it is I mean, I'll put it on the screen. This is how much it actually ended up being in today's money. And that money could have been put towards the debt that France owed, but it wasn't. And now I'm going to end the video, the part 2. We will pick back up in part 3. This is what's happening with Marie right now. She's already got 3 chateaux. She's had a couple kids with Louis. France is really hating her at this point, and she's spending all the money France does not have, especially at this time, and not making French people very happy at this time either. So yeah, if you like this video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, bell notifications every Monday and occasionally Fridays. If you like this makeup look as well, links, video link, channel links, social links down below. Please go look, please go check them out. Parts, however many parts this is gonna end up being. And part 1, if, like I said at the beginning, if you didn't watch part 1, you should have watched it before this. It's gonna be linked down below. My channel for this channel is gonna be linked down below as well. And yeah, check us out. I'd love to see you guys in the next video.